Hello everyone and welcome to tonight's PlayHQ information session webinar for country cricket. Thank you very much for your time. By way of introduction, my name is Luke Miner. I am the My Cricket and PlayHQ specialist here at Cricket New South Wales. So thank you very much for your time tonight. Obviously, there's been a bit happening and we're getting much closer day by day to launching on the PlayHQ platform. But I guess we just wanted to provide some additional information. We know that some information has been provided previously, and to those who have seen that, apologies in advance if there is some duplication. But we know it's obviously been a busy, hectic couple of years and couple of seasons, and that there's been a lot going on over the last few months towards the end of the cricket season and then moving into the winter sports as well. So we've definitely positioned tonight's webinar to summarise some of the key points. Just a couple of housekeeping matters first. If you do have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function and populate your questions in there. Just conscious of time, we're not going to dive too much into those questions at the end of this session, but I do certainly encourage you to ask those questions, and we will ensure that all the answers to those questions are shared with all attendees post this session. The session will also be recorded, so don't stress too much about screenshotting any information or writing too many notes. We're happy to share the slide deck and also happy to share the recording over the coming days. And also the purpose of tonight, the key purpose of tonight is to outline the key system and process changes in My Cricket, in PlayHQ, as we lead into the coming season. So we want to definitely position yourselves that when you are in your respective training sessions, and we're talking about where you actually learn the system, whether that be your association training sessions or whether you duplicate into the club space as well, that you can actually focus on the tech and the workflows involved in that. And we want to cover off some of the key changes and system benefits over the next hour or so. So with that being said, we'll get into tonight's presentation. Firstly, I just want to start with an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge and pay respects to the hundreds of First Nation and traditional custodians of the land and waters encompassing where we are privileged to live, work and play the great game of cricket on. We recognise and celebrate their spiritual and ongoing connection to culture and country. We respectfully acknowledge all elders past, present and emerging as we continue to cherish shared wisdom and grow with their guidance as we walk together toward a connected country. So a bit of an agenda for tonight. Basically, we're going to start off and sort of recapping where we've come from. So as many of you are likely aware, Cricket New South Wales, along with the other states and territories, have been running Cricket Blast on the PlayHQ platform. They were programs that were run by Cricket New South Wales staff members. So there's obviously been some key learnings and key experiences out of that we're happy to share. Northern Territory and Queensland are currently on the platform now, and we look forward to sharing some more information around those learnings as they now dive into their competition space. We want to talk through some of the key functional changes, as I've mentioned. So Cricket ID is potentially something you've heard about, the national registration fee, online registration and payments. We want to talk a little bit about the transition plan for New South Wales specifically and how that relates to the broader Australian cricket transition plan. We'll talk about the PlayHQ system and the player benefits and the administrator benefits as well. We'll touch on historical data and player statistics, which has naturally been, and rightfully so, a hot topic of conversation. We'll talk about some of the key functionality, so your competition management, your e-scoring and websites, and we'll finish off with some more detailed exploring of training and support available throughout this transition. So just where it started, so there's been what we called Milestone 1 was essentially state and territory run Cricket Blast centres. That process is still ongoing now. It sort of commenced from the start of last season and has run right through, and we're continuing to run those programs as of now through the winter months coming ahead. So approximately there's been 60 Cricket New South Wales staff trained in creating and managing approximately 231 programs. As a guide, there's sort of roughly 400 programs across the entire country. So we've been involved in more than half of those. So there has been some learnings that we've been able to take out. What did that involve? It essentially involved an e-learning module of around 15 minutes, some in-depth platform demonstration and a task list to complete, some face-to-face and digital sessions on request with Cricket Australia, and the training methods have been scoured for the community rollout. So we would love to do everything, specifically every single function available on PlayHQ, but we're obviously very conscious of time. We want to make sure that the information you get is relevant, but also timely as well. So the functionality, what were the takeouts? Programs were easy to create, took 2 to 3 minutes, even 5 minutes, and manage registrations and payments. And the group functionality was a useful feature. We'll talk a little bit more about that group functionality, but I guess think of it this way. It was a really easy way to either divide up age groups within a singular session, potentially break groups up into girls only and then the open group, or potentially run the same Cricket Blast session at multiple venues at the same time if you were potentially running that from an association point of view. Moving on to where we're at now, which is Milestone 2, and this is Northern Territory and Queensland are currently right in the midst of their season. So there's been the Darwin Junior and Senior competitions as well as their Cricket Blast. And there's also been Queensland Veterans Cricket as well. So the following information relates to Queensland's Veterans Comp. So they delivered their association and club training in Feb 2022. In late Feb, their registrations open, and as it currently sits, there's over 1,000 registrations just for the Veterans Cricket. They did their fixtures, match day and e-scoring training in late March, and the season began in early April. So by the time it's all said and done and those competitions are finished and we throw Darwin into the mix as well, we're expecting 3 competitions, 50 odd clubs, 2,500 odd participants and 30 administrators using the system. So as I touched on, there has been some good intel coming out of that phase of the project, and we do look forward to sharing that over the coming weeks and months. So Cricket ID, potentially something you've heard about, but it may have been confused with the My Cricket ID. It's going to certainly be an important feature going forward. So your Cricket ID will be used for all technology platforms across cricket, and you will link your Cricket ID when you create a PlayHQ account during the registration process. So basically, it's that what we're trying to move back to singular sign-on where possible. So that doesn't just include, moving in a direction of PlayHQ where there's one login, but trying to bring the whole cricket ecosystem into one singular experience or one singular login, which I'm sure many of you on the call right now are probably operating 2, 3, 4, maybe even more My Cricket logins. So your Cricket ID will link starting on the top right there to your My Cricket ID. It'll link to cricket.com.au. So if you watch some live streaming on that, whether that be Shield or some of the other C8 content, it'll link to the My Cricket community website, which is where you have where you go if you're an umpire or a coach. So that accreditation will be linked into that. Obviously, your PlayHQ login and the Cricket family meeting if you're purchasing tickets to a game. So trying to connect that experience, and this is one of the first touch points. Many of you will probably already have Cricket IDs, so the registration process will either flush that out, or if you don't have a Cricket ID for new participants into our game, there'll be a linking process, and there'll be more information as you go. Obviously, as part of the training that you will complete, but also to get your head around what that looks like from a customer point of view, so we can support our players and parents through that process. So your national registration fee. So I guess when you've got any decisions regarding financial management or the cost of playing sport, you want to make sure that you're robustly undertaking and receiving feedback to understand the scope and to also understand what's best for cricket going forward. So that was certainly undertaken back in 2021. CA commissioned research from String Research Insights Consulting to better understand knowledge and attitudes towards membership fees and price sensitivity. So there was over 1,300 responses nationwide. That was a mixture of players, parents and administrators, and naturally some people fell into 1, 2 or 3 of those categories pending your experience. So what were the key findings that came out of that? So there was definitely a limited understanding of what player registration fees cover. There was a preference for more detailed fee breakdown to show who is receiving funds, how much they receive, and what expenses are covered. And in fairness, that's been something that's been heavily called out, not only through players and parents, but through administrators as well, in wanting to share what the cost of cricket looks like to their customers. Fears that fees will continue to increase over time. Greater detail and improving knowledge about what fees cover has the biggest positive impact on willingness to pay. So again, that transparency piece. When it's clear the new fee is replacing existing fees, it does not have a negative impact on club registration. So in particular, calling out that the insurance will be a component of this national registration fee, and a willingness to pay up to $25 provided players, parents and administrators under the fee is replacing existing costs and have clarity of the coverage. So I guess diving a little bit deeper into the operations of the national registration fee. So it applies to junior and senior players and paid at the point of registration each season, and it's paid once in the 365-day period. Now, I guess just the call out there, if you get towards that back end of the 365-day period and you go to register again because of a slight, you start a weekend earlier than you did the previous season, it will actually look at the finishing date of that competition. So no one will be able to boycott, and this applies to fees being able to be charged at association level as well. No one will be able to work around it. It will ensure that for all intensive purposes, it ties into one payment per cricket season participation, but it also encapsulates if you participate across summer and winter as well, to make sure the fee is not paid twice. The national registration fee is locked in for 3 years, so addressing that point around raising the cost of fees. It's been locked in for 3 years, so any increases to insurance premiums or anything like that over the next 3 years will be borne by Australian Cricket. What does it cover? So it covers 3 elements. It covers the insurance, so your personal injury, and also really key to call out that it actually covers public liability and club management, which is obviously really key insurance components for the operations of clubs, associations, councils and zones. The PlayHQ subscription fee, very similar to what you pay for Netflix, Stan, any of your existing subscriptions out there. So that is going to enable some ongoing investments into the PlayHQ platform itself, so the competition and program management system, and will also increase the capacity of the support team. So your MyCricket, currently your MyCricket support team, but your Australian cricket team through 1-800-CRICKET. It's really key that we avoid a MyCricket 2.0 scenario, and a large portion of that was due to limited funding and limited vision around cricket and what it might look like in 5, 10, 20 years' time. And communities, apps and websites. So this is enabling ongoing investment into digital technology. And I guess, in short, there's been a really heavy focus on-field improvements to the game, which is obviously vitally important. Some of that attention has turned to off-field experience and fan and player engagement, and how we improve those off-field experiences to match the great experience that our players get on the field currently. So what does it cost? So juniors, if you're 18 or younger as of September 1, it'll be $16. And for seniors, if you're 19 or older at September 1st, it'll be $22.50. Now, the key thing to call out at this point is, currently on the MyCricket platform, one of the things that has caused a little bit of confusion is whether you, who should register first? Should you register for junior cricket first? Should you register for senior cricket first? Should you register for the local academy, Cricket New South Wales Academy? And it gets all a bit confusing. It's not going to matter based on what your registration type is. It's going to matter on your age. So if you're 14 years old and your first touch point is to register for a senior cricket competition because you're going to play 5th grade for the upcoming season, then you'll pay your $16. So we just want to provide that clarity to players and parents at the point of sale, but also administrators who are trying to support the community through this change as well. So how does it break down? Just to give some guide around the costs, your community apps and website costs and the PlayHQ fees are the same, whether you're a junior or senior cricketer. And the cost of insurance varies based on, and look, the premium has risen over for the coming season. I think the key thing to call out here is obviously what has happened historically is that people have actually contributed to the insurance policy multiple times pending their journey in cricket. So obviously we had a disconnected phase there for the last couple of seasons where juniors would pay their insurance at the point of sale, but they would also then go and participate in senior cricket as well, often not realising that the money they paid to their club was then contributed in some way to the association, so the association could cover the insurance bill. That's what we're really keen to stop. We want to make sure you contribute once and it's really clear what you contribute, and there's not that potential double dipping that happens just through, organically through your cricket journey. So bringing it a little bit to life, and this is talking a little bit about that community websites and apps piece. So it's definitely towards the future. Honestly, we're not going to see, this play out in 12 months. There's obviously a lot of work that goes into, but this is a broader vision for continuing to actually outline, and improve those off-field experiences in cricket. So I think this is a pretty good example on bringing it to life. So you've got Bella, who's 15 years old, loves cricket and the social connection of the team sport she plays, and she plays for Box Hill Cricket Club. So moving through the journey, so Bella gets a notification. So on Tuesday gets a notification asking if she's available to play on the weekend. She confirms after leaving training on Wednesday. It's confirmed that Bella gets picked in the under-16 second 11s. On Sunday morning, Bella's dad's driving to the ground. Bella gets Google Map coordinates on where the ground is. She's obviously also able to go through and have a look at the players in the other team and the ladder and just see how that team's going. Today's T20 match has been live streamed on Frogbox, so you might have seen some of our country cricket games being streamed on Frogbox, also very prevalent down in Metro Sydney with Premier Cricket and things like that. It's certainly going to keep growing, and I know many associations, councils and zones have purchased frog boxes in recent years, so we'll talk a little bit more about that, but essentially that will be part of the transition to PlayHQ. There'll be no need to adjust or do anything differently. It'll be included within the PlayHQ system. So Bella takes 3 for 12 off 4 overs, her best bowling figures in her short career. Bella gets a notification that highlights of the match are available with her teammates. They watch the highlights together on the big screen at the club straight after the game. Moving forward again to the next week, Bella reviews match footage with her coach at training. Her coach identifies areas for her to work on. Bella uses LilyPad, so that potentially will be a user-paid system, for clubs, associations, councils and zones, but also for individuals to potentially chop up, some of their season highlights. So I guess the best example to bring it to life would be, historically we have a lot of players at this time of year go over to England. I wouldn't say chasing sun necessarily, but over there to play cricket, rather than sending off a 2-page email, how good you are at cricket with a couple of references, you might be able to send them a bit of match footage of, how good you do hack it over cow corner. So that's going to be a bit of a game changer and something that's really exciting. And then the last point there, Bella gets a notification congratulating her on a personal best bowling figures. The offer allows her free entry to the BBL game next week. So it definitely does open up some commercial opportunities as well, but I certainly, and I'm sure you agree, don't see any hindrance at the end of the game if someone's had a bit of a day out or just been participating through the season, that they get a free Gatorade or something at the end of the season to pick up at their local Woolies. So just trying to again improve those off-field experiences for players and just provide something a little bit different. So online registration and payment. Each season going forward, from season 22-23 on, all participants, so to reinforce that will be juniors and seniors, will need to register themselves to their club before participating in games of cricket. Ongoing registrations will automatically populate fields based on the previous registration, so really keen to save people's time. If they've already put relevant information in, then that will be remembered, and they'll only have to fill in information that's unique to that individual registration if it's a couple of custom questions, etc. Enabling quick and simple online registration and payment is a key benefit of PlayHQ for both the participant and clubs and associations, and we'll touch a little bit around the side for clubs and associations a little bit later on. PlayHQ has been designed to simplify running clubs and associations. So paperless management of member information, which we know many of you are doing, but definitely want to help with that process by getting all of it online. Removing the need for handling cash and reconciling registration payments, especially come March, where those players still might not have played their fees. Improve pre-season club association cash flow, so getting that money into clubs and associations up front, so you can purchase clothes, purchase balls, pay ground fees, all those ongoing expenses, upfront expenses that aren't necessarily seen by participants, but are really crucial to the running of cricket. Insurance model changing to individual payments instead of team payments in senior cricket spaces. The minimum point, and it's really key, I understand this is a transition process. I do understand the amount of fees that some players pay, especially in the senior cricket space, especially those that might not have access to active kids vouchers. So it's really keen that we encourage you to continue to use those payment options if there's players or families on payment plans, because that assists their participation in cricket. That's absolutely fine. We understand that. The minimum payment at the point of registration will be the national registration fee. So that's a really key call out. If there's an association fee attached, that will also be payable at the point of sale. So maybe if you are considering incorporating a fee for this coming season, maybe just sort of scope that out and see how that's going to resonate for your clubs out there. So online registration and payment in terms of Stripe. So Stripe's the payment gateway that will sit behind the system. So as a guide, currently in my cricket, there's a CBA payment gateway, so your Commonwealth Bank payment gateway that sits behind. However, still a lot of the manual work has to be done by Australian Cricket to ensure that those monies are being reconciled in the correct bank account on a fortnightly basis, and there's a hell of a lot of work that goes into that. So PlayHQ's integration with Stripe provides simple, streamlined payment system enabling clubs and associations to collect payments quickly and securely, access detailed reports and manage cash flow and payouts with ease. So as a guide, as I touched on, 2 weeks is kind of where it's at for my cricket. In Stripe and PlayHQ, we're looking at 48 hours from the point of sale. So 2 business days after the transaction, you'll see those funds hit the account. We are working through how that applies to active kids vouchers, because we also need that money actually comes from the New South Wales Office of Sport. So there may need to be a little bit more time for payments that involve the active kids vouchers, but we'll make sure we share that information over the coming weeks and months. The PlayHQ fee structure allows associations to recoup costs from participants directly at the point of registration through the association fee, removing manual process of recouping money. I think probably what's key to call out, and again, this is a transition phase. You might be collecting certainly at association level, whether they be affiliation fees, team nomination fees. Is there potentially some scope to move that from a per team or per club payment into a capitation model or individual payment? So break those costs down over, the average amount of players. We know it's not a perfect science, and that there's not always just 11 to 12 players, especially in a senior team. There might be 30 or 40 seniors that navigate a team over the course of the season. So nobody better than yourselves are in those positions to make those decisions. We just want to provide you the platform to charge those fees to the participants. Another option going forward might be to potentially look at getting a pool of funds around your facility. So whether that's, turf wicket gets damaged or a synthetic wicket gets damaged, local council won't necessarily come to the party, that you've got some funds there at the association level to cover the cost of that repair. Or maybe you just want to start building a little kitty of funds so you can contribute to Australian cricket infrastructure funds and other grants that are available, because we know that money doesn't come without a contribution. So certainly, there are a couple of options to consider. As I said, no need to necessarily apply that for the coming season, but it might be conversations you take back to your committees and your stakeholders around what cricket might look like in your local area over the coming seasons. So diving a little bit more into how this all works. So as a guide, there's a 1.8% transaction fee that's applied to each entity that's charging a fee. So you basically cover the cost of your own fee. and as a comparison, that was 1.95% in MyCricket. The transaction fee is deducted from the organisation fee. So as you can see, on the left there, you've got the amount payable. So that if you break the $125 registration fee down in this example, 16 would be payable to Cricket Australia. The association is charging a $30 fee, and 79 is being charged by the club to make a total of 125. In terms of how those fees are reconciled back into the bank accounts of those respective organisations, it's basically the Stripe account figure less 1.8%. So it's really key to note here that it's not charged to the participant. I guess, and I've seen it before, and I'm sure there's probably a couple of you doing it as well. You could essentially look at adding 2 or 3% onto your fees at this, in terms of the way your fees are charged. Certainly Cricket Australia won't be doing that, but you could essentially add 2 or 3% onto the club fee to cover the cost of the transaction fee, essentially. So insurance information in PlayHQ, how's it going to work? So for Woolies Cricket Blast participants, the process is unchanged. The insurance is built into the base cost of your program, so your $99. The participant is insured for the length of and activities of that program. For junior players, again, the process is unchanged. Insurance payment made at the point of registration, so that becomes the national registration fee. The move away from competition type model used in MyCricket, and the national registration price is based on the age cutoffs, as I said, 18 or under at September 1. For senior players, that's where the largest change is, and again, we know this is a bit of a phase to work through, and we're really committed to working with you through this change. So the insurance payment made at the point of sale, so again, the national registration fee, the age cutoff is 19 above. There's no longer any need for associations to pay the $110 per team that was payable for insurance historically, so that's been removed. So clubs and associations, all insurance costs removed, as was touched on, and download a renewed certificate of currency from July 1st at no cost. So that's obviously where you paid your insurance bill, so there'll be no need to do that. There's obviously so that was historically done through the MyCricket platform that would then lead you into the Marsh platform. You'll just directly go to Marsh to access that certificate of currency. You will not need to make any payment to access that certificate of currency. So that's obviously a bit of a process change, so we'll make sure that we share the relevant information over the coming weeks in the lead up to July 1, when people will want to start booking grounds, etc., for the coming season. Employees, volunteers, coaches, umpires, spectators covered by valid accreditation or via the club and association renewing its certificate of currency. So again, just showing that you're again an active organisation for the coming year and have that capacity to book grounds under the certificate of currency. Also links back in through the insurance payable by players for that club liability insurance, etc. In terms of what's covered, if you're looking for more information around what's covered, its full details are on the Marsh website, and you get more information whether you're a club or association or you're a player or volunteer. And the coverage length is 365 days, and the national registration fee is only paid once, as touched on before. Fill-in players, obviously a really relevant piece, especially for senior cricket. We know it's sometimes required to seek players at short notice to fill in. So you have the ability to add these in through the e-scoring platform if you're using that, or you can actually add them in through the administration site. But in terms of, so that means the national registration fee won't be payable to those players, but you'll be required to register completely to be insured and make sure that you're so you'll get 1 game's grace around the fill-in players. But in terms of not just the insurance being the stick approach, but if you want to be able to link with your playing history and you don't want to just go down as, player A in the system, you want to be able to connect back to your historical data in MyCricket. That's where your Cricket ID comes into play. So it's only those that register and pay online the national registration fee that will have their players and historical statistics linked to their MyCricket account. So the transition plan for the coming season, So, you know, who's actually transitioning onto the platform. So we're going to have our junior and senior community competitions. We're going to have our Woolworths Cricket Blast. We're going to have clubs, including school entities who compete in association-run competitions. And representative competitions, so like your New South Wales Youth Champs, etc., Bradman Cup, all those type of things will be on the PlayHQ platform. Does not include school-run competitions, so we're talking about where the school-based organisation is the competition manager or the association body, so like your PWSAs as an example, and indoor cricket centres. Definitely in the school space, the plan at this stage is to have them on the platform for next season, 23-24 season, and we will be communicating that to the key sporting bodies in the school space, and we just want to work through the indoor cricket space as well. Obviously really important to the cricket ecosystem. We just want to make sure it's right, knowing that indoor cricket currently have their own competition management platform and often their own registration platforms as well. Dual platforms, so I guess what are the key benefits of bringing all of New South Wales onto the platform for the coming season? Well, it's eliminating the need for volunteers, players and parents to operate across both platforms. That was a very, very large consideration in what we were doing, and we didn't want to see people like yourselves having to navigate both My Cricket and PlayHQ for competition management for the coming season. Consistent application of youth champs and carnivals hosted by regional cricket organisations. So, you know, we know many of you run carnivals in regional areas. We know that metro clubs and associations come in to participate in those carnivals, especially. And again, we didn't want to have to go back down that dual platform path of needing a whole new registration process to get those metro organisations into those carnival competitions. National registration fees, so governing body fees, will be charged consistently across all players, so there wouldn't be one workflow for My Cricket, one workflow for PlayHQ. We wanted to make sure it was the same for everyone. And another real key consideration, just with the natural basis, so roughly around 40 to 50% of the country is coming across onto the PlayHQ platform this year, with the remainder of cricket to come across in season 23-24. We're going to get additional support and resourcing from PlayHQ and Cricket Australia, which will be of immense value as we navigate this transition. We know there'll be hiccups. We know there'll be bumps along the way. There'll be things that happen that will be unexpected. We appreciate you working with us, but we genuinely do believe that moving to a PlayHQ platform that might be 75 or 80% of its full capacity is still far better than the 100% capacity we have on My Cricket. It's a 14-year-old system, it's outdated, and I hear, and our staff and our organisation hear from people like yourself constantly about how it's just making it more difficult to do your administration jobs in cricket. So we've heard you loud and clear. You know, we have a new product available, and we're keen to make sure you've got access to that as soon as possible. So your PlayHQ system benefits. So you've got your core features. As I've touched on, online registration and payment system takes approximately a quarter of the time compared to My Cricket. It includes an ability to customise merchandise, again, which we'll share a little bit more information as you continue to navigate the training over the coming months. There's a simplified and customisable program system, including the ability for clubs to run multiple Woolworths Cricket Blast programs and free local programs. So there's actually going to be some functionality there if your association, council zone outside of our regular academy programs, run your own local winner academy, or you know, even potentially want to just take online payments for the trivia night or the golf day or a fundraiser. Through the local programs function, you'll be able to do that financial management online as well. So again, another benefit to your operations that can move online that you may have historically done offline. Greater flexibility on price points for registration, so including the ability to include an association fee, as we've touched on already. New e-scoring product available on smartphones, tablets, and probably a win, especially for our representative scorers, being the access to do it on computers or laptops. So PlayHQ, the e-scoring solution they have is actually a web-based one. So it uses a web address as opposed to an app. That gives us the greater flexibility, and it will also readjust screen sizing, etc., based on the device you're using. So new competition management system to manage fixtures and venues. We'll touch a little bit more on that, but again, over the coming months, as you begin to engage with the PlayHQ training, you'll learn more about the competition management side of things. Integrations with MailChimp. So anytime, so I guess PlayHQ does, program and competition management, payments, and e-scoring really well as their core product offerings. In terms of things that are really key to cricket, things like websites, things like communicating with players and parents, your frog boxes, there's been integrations built from the best in breed in those areas to link back into the PlayHQ platform. So as you can see, a couple there, and Officials HQ, obviously my cricket dibbled and dabbled in the umpire management system. One of the key ones, and especially around the payment sides of things, and making it easier to allocate umpires to games, capture their availability for the coming season. Personally, I actually had a bit of a demonstration around that a couple of weeks ago, and that system is looking really, really good. So again, we're looking forward to providing more information around Officials HQ as we move closer, one through the training, but as we move closer to the start of the season as well. So what are the player benefits for PlayHQ? So you got your linking of a single PlayHQ account with the existing MyCricket ID to unlock that basic journey I touched on at the start with the Cricket ID. Moving forward, your PlayHQ account will be your single account for all digital activities. So your Cricket ID will link all those logins together, and you will use your PlayHQ login to access, your coaching journey, your umpiring journey, whether you're live streaming, etc. So again, that's a bit of a change. We understand, that's going to be a bit of a journey, but again, we've learnt a fair bit through the current process of the registrations in Queensland and Northern Territory, and also through Cricket Blast. So we're going to make sure that you're appropriately supported through that change as you help players and parents through that change as well. Full integration with Frogbox and future use of Lilypad highlight pending club investment. So as we talked about, that's where that initial club and websites and component of the national registration fee will come into play, and we can start to build elements like Lilypad out as well. Transparency on fees and clear understanding of associated costs, which we heard loud and clear was a key consideration for administrators, parents and players. Greater flexibilities on fees. Clubs can curate this around whether it's age or, discount for female players as an example. And this will include your Active Kids voucher. So for year one, unfortunately, we'll only have the Active Kids voucher in play, but the future state over the coming seasons is to have the Active Kids voucher in play, as well as additional discounts pending clubs making that available to their customers. Mobile optimization. So as I talked about, that resizing, because it's web-based, it'll resize based on the device you're using, and anyone that's had to select a team last minute on the MyCricket admin site on a mobile phone, that can be quite an interesting journey. We're not going to see any more of that in PlayHQ. All historical MyCricket player data and future PlayHQ player data will be retained. I touch on that a little bit in the next slide. Uplifted support structure to assist players with registrations and managing their profiles. So the CA support team is actually going to grow in numbers, but there's actually going to be a dedicated resource for PlayHQ and MyCricket. Obviously, we're not going to be too reliant on the MyCricket side of things, but there's going to be a dedicated PlayHQ component to the support structure. Australian cricket commercial partners looking to bring greater value. So as I talked a little bit with Bella, and being offered 2 tickets to the Big Bash, or potentially the Gatorade at the end of the game, they're the opportunities that our players are going to receive that they haven't historically received through digital platforms anyway. So your historical data and player statistics, what does this look like? Well, essentially there on the left-hand side of the now, you've got your MyCricket websites feeding straight into the MyCricket app. What it looks like going forward is, and to try and explain it in the least jargonistic way that I can, you've got your MyCricket and your PlayHQ data that might surface up that data very differently in the way that data comes across. That will go through a third-party data source and straight into the MyCricket app. So that's where your Cricket ID comes into play. So you're not seeing, one lot of statistics for My Cricket, one lot of statistics for PlayHQ. We want to merge it all into one and surface that up as one player or one touch point within the app. Clubs and associations will retain their My Cricket access for communication purposes in the pre-season. So we'll make sure you still have access to your databases around player contacts, email addresses. There won't be the necessary access to set up competitions or anything like that, and that's really because we'd hate to, someone missed a key communication, went ahead and set up 4 or 5 different online registrations in My Cricket, not knowing about the PlayHQ transition. So there won't be that access to the system, but we'll make sure that from a reporting point of view, and even if it's just something as simple as we know under our taxation laws that you need to keep 7 years of financial records. So we need to make sure that, should you be audited as an example, that you still have access to that information. So it's getting archived and potentially turned off from public view, but it's not been, pushed into the rubbish bin or anything like that. Participants will create a new PlayHQ account as their single touch point moving forward, has been reinforced a couple of times. So competition management, clubs and association administrators are at the heart of what PlayHQ do, and personally, having seen that firsthand, it absolutely is, making life easier by centralising core aspects of competition management in one platform. So a couple of key things is going to be venue and clash management. We know that's really important to make sure that we've got a process for acknowledging when there might be 2 games scheduled at the same field, potentially not hugely common in regional areas, given the large distances between grounds often, but obviously something that's really common for our metro constituents. So really keen to make sure that functionality is there. Clear and simple transfers and permits in the system. Again, it could be a bit of a transition phase, but again, for the coming season, we want to make sure that you have access to relevant information regarding players that register. We know you'll probably look at the registrations come in, and 90-95% of them you'll go, yep, I know Jenny blogs. Jenny's been playing with us for a while, so nothing there. But if you get a new registration, you want to be able to cross-check that, because we're also really acutely aware that, there's under bylaws and playing conditions and constitutions that there is potentially some restriction around where players can play if they're already participated in a certain competition. So we want to make sure that those processes continue. Enhanced fixturing tools. So basically, being able to utilise third-party resources, and maybe if that's even potentially doing your draw in Excel and then uploading that into the PlayHQ platform, rather than potentially doing all your draw work offline and then manually having you added into My Cricket, which was pretty comprehensive, but it was pretty singular around the way that it needed to be done and didn't provide a lot of flexibility. Fast score entry and amendment for club and association administrators. So the ability to not only lock scores after a period of time, which is obviously really important, but able to amend and open games. So those relevant scores can be made. Tommy got 11 instead of 12. It wasn't picked up for a few days after the game, and the relevant amendment needed to be made in the system. There's a bit going on here. Just take a moment just to take it all in, but there is a bit of a change in the workflow. So historically, associations could sort of operate, or competition managers, knowing that councils and zones perform that operation sometimes as well, potentially didn't really come too much into the equation until it was time to set up grades, add those respective teams in, and then obviously go up and set a draw as well. That's changed a little bit. So in this process, the association will commence things with creating the competition. Again, the training will go into more detail around don't fear that you need to actually have all your competition details, including formats and everything, flushed out right at this point of the season. There'll be, I guess, as little limitation to that process as you would like, depending on how you run your operation. So you basically create the competition, you then invite the clubs in. So the clubs won't be pre-allocated to your associations when we load them into PlayHQ, which is currently happening at the moment. You'll basically be able to search the database and basically choose your affiliates and select them into your relevant competition. The club accepts the invitation. The club then becomes linked to the competition. That's how you draw on things like if the association's charging an association fee, if there's things like certain custom questions, so whether you want to grab a player, the association wants to grab a player code of conduct as part of the club registration, so we don't want that double duplication or things having to operate outside the system where it's not required, and then clubs will be able to start taking their registration. So I guess my advice, given what I've seen, and we'll go into a little bit more detail as we continue to communicate this out through Cricket New South Wales. I'm sort of suggesting a couple-week gap between club operations and association operations, just to give that association said time to perform their functions. We're also really aware that, especially over the next 2 or 3 months, some of you are not in a position to be setting up your competitions because they're generally operations that you do in August, September. So we'll have the relevant training at those times as well for those people and those organisations. But just note, and I guess a really key communication piece for your clubs to say that, the association needs to do a couple of tasks before your clubs can get involved. As I said, about 2 weeks is a pretty good leeway to not put anyone under the pump. Just be really conscious that from an association point of view, we will need to do a couple of things before your clubs can get in and do what they need to do for the coming season. So electronic scoring, as I touched on, it's a web-based electronic scoring solution. So it's got full integration with the registration admin portal. So once you register there, it will pull that information down so you can select teams, very similar to what we've got with the MyCricket Live Score app. It's optimized to work across all common devices. Cloud-based, so no dropout, so we can actually scale up. I'm sure you've all witnessed very frustratingly as cricket seems to max out in volume sort of somewhere in late October as regional New South Wales and Victoria join the metro competitions in those states and more states come onto the platform. There always seemed to be one particular weekend where we face challenges. And that was a really key, part of making sure that our e-scoring solution was more improved going forward. So certainly not expecting to see anything like that happen in the PlayHQ platform, which is reassuring. Improved logic and workflows, so more cohesive when working alongside a scorebook. I know myself, as along with many other community members out there, have provided that feedback to Cricket Australia and to PlayHQ. In turn, a lot of the feedback that we've received around the MyCricket Live Score app is that it's great. The one suggested improvement was around how it better works with scorebooks. But sure, in a future state, is there probably 2 electronic devices scoring a cricket game? There probably is, but we know how technology works in 2022. We get dropouts, products run out of battery. Sitting out in the hot sun, 40 degrees, there might be things that happen outside your control. So that scorebook does become really important. Initially, PlayHQ e-scoring functionality will match that offered by the MyCricket Live Score app with a long-term aim to providing even better scoring experiences. So I think it's really key, and we want to make sure that you have access to the same things you have available in MyCricket when it comes to the e-scoring. It's probably really key to call out at this point that the MyCricket Live Score app that you see today has probably had 6 or 7 years development into it. The PlayHQ live scoring solution that we have probably has 12 months of development in it. So again, based on personal experience, really happy with where that's at and how, it's very similar to the MyCricket app in terms of its aesthetics, bar a couple of different colours. So certainly any intellectual property you developed over a long period of time around the MyCricket Live Score app, certainly is not lost, but this app is only going to continue to get better. Like the PlayHQ system will only continue to get better over the coming years. So community focus groups are providing direct feedback to PlayHQ regarding the main pain points when using the current MyCricket product so that planning can commence to address these issues. And we're not only doing that in a testing environment, we're obviously seeing that firsthand through the transition that's currently happening in Queensland and Northern Territory. So Wix, so this is your website integration. MyCricket Club Association websites will be decommissioned as cricket transitions to PlayHQ. So it's really key to call out at this point that access to MyCricket websites will remain for at least another 12 months. So what that specifically looks like, we're still probably mapping that out, but again, like the data that sits in the MyCricket admin site, we're certainly, in some cases, the public viewing of that may be removed, but we certainly want to make sure you can access the material that sits within there, knowing that you potentially have a lot of club documentation or policy documentation, that slow-moving documentation and a rich history of your association council's own. So your PlayHQ and Australian Cricket have partnered with Wix. So Wix is a provider, not necessarily the only solution available. Solutions to provide clubs and associations with a premium website management experience, delivering a modern and digital presence to their members. So what's some of the benefits? Sorry, just trying to get that light in the background to work. So direct integration with PlayHQ fixtures, ladders and results. Flexible built purpose for cricket template. So the Wix offering that's actually going to be built out will be specific for cricket. Optimized for mobile phone use, no external advertising, and that is more about your pop-ups that potentially come in. Obviously really focus from a child safety point of view around that content as well, and making sure there's not things visible that shouldn't be, and a whole suite of other applications providing even greater website functionality. So I'll jump into the next slide because there's probably a couple of questions that are brewing in your mind. So what's the cost? There is a cost to this Wix offering, and it is $312 per year or $250 for 2 years. And Cricket Australia will be providing a 20% discount on those prices, so you can take 20% off those prices for clubs and associations who enter the agreement. Do you have to take up the Wix offering? Certainly not. You're more than welcome to go through another website provider, but the only premium Wix solution that will have a direct integration with PlayHQ will be the Wix one. You can, however, embed your club or association's fixtures, ladders, results into your own website. However, this will take your members away from the website. So I'm sure there's people on this call and many people in Australian cricket who have great capabilities when it comes to websites. And I know some people are really passionate about that as well, because it's essentially a shop front to your organisation. So, if you have the skills within your organisation to use the other website offerings available, then feel free to do so. I suppose there's a level of convenience and automation to this investment, so it automatically links in with the key elements of the PlayHQ competition management platform. Will Cricket Australia help with the transition? Yes, so the Cricket Australia team will essentially set up each club or association's Wix template, and that includes, extracting some of those previous documentation, getting them in the right format to be uploaded to the Wix website. So training and support, looking a little bit into that. What does that look like? So Cricket Australia and Cricket New South Wales are committed through the transition plan to provide training and support in assisting every club and association administrator in learning, adopting and efficiently using the PlayHQ platform. And as I've touched on a couple of times tonight, we know this is not going to just take 12 months. We know that there's going to be a bit of a journey. We know, committees out there, it doesn't matter what level of the game they're at, there's turnover, there's always going to be a need to ensure we're upskilling the right people, and that's where this resourcing is really important. So developed in a range of formats, so you've got webinars, videos, learning as you go, PDF documents, and support websites. So we want people to be able to choose their own learning journey. Something that's obviously changed a little bit, especially in regional areas, is that access to content through online platforms. There's not necessarily a need to drive 2 or 3 hours to a local club or clubhouse or something like that, which is nice, but also really time consuming. So there'll be those, we want to make sure there's relevant options and tailored to those local cricket communities in terms of that resourcing and support. A couple of additional layers of support. So you've got your national support team, which I've touched on, which is going to see an uplift not only in numbers, but have some dedicated PlayHQ staff within that team. The ability for administrators to book consults with Cricket Australia. So I've actually had a look at that platform. You basically go in, book a meeting, and you can essentially go, hey, I'm looking at setting up my draw for the coming season. I would just love a bit of proactive help around the best way to do that. And then rather than, waiting to potentially face a challenge or to not be sure how to do something, you can proactively get that help in a time that suits you, and go in and actually work through that particular function. Cricket New South Wales has provisions for face-to-face learning. We look forward to sharing more information about that. We're going to go through a bit of a consult phase we have to date, and we will continue to go through to make sure that we are providing training in relevant formats for each local cricket community, and localised support and transition plan for each association, and extending to councils and zones. We know that it can take, as I've touched on, it can be a large drive for some to reach a central point within a zone or a cricket council, or even sometimes an association, depending on the geographics. So there needs to be that balance. There certainly will be that face-to-face support available, but certainly by no means are we insisting that the only avenue to support and training is through face-to-face content. There'll certainly be a plethora of online resourcing available as well. So training plan, what does it look like at a very high level? So you've got your association learning modules. So you've got your association comp starter, which will go through setting up the organisation details, the basic competition setup and inviting clubs that was in that diagram. Then you got your comp manager process, which would actually, if you work through a 1 to 4 step process, the comp manager would actually be the last step in the process after the clubs have gone through and done their 2 pieces. So that's generating your fixtures, ladders, match results, reports, etc. In terms of the club learning, so you've got your club starter that would immediately follow your comp starter at the association level, and that's organisation details for the clubs. It's creating your teams and it's setting up your online registrations, and then it's your club manager. It's actually utilising those registrations to start managing your participants, to put them in teams, and obviously you got your Cricket Blast management, and you've got your reporting as well. So just a really key call out here, because we know things operate at different levels, and especially associations, councils, and sometimes zones, perform different functions and don't only operate as competition managers, but they also operate as representative teams. So it is likely that all zones, cricket councils and associations will need to act as both associations for competitions and as clubs for representative teams. So really key that when you are organising your training, we certainly don't want one person to have to go through all 4 training modules, and there'll be a couple of additional training modules around Wix and MailChimp and things like that as well. But it's really key that you want to definitely start becoming familiar with some club functionality as well. So how's that going to operate? In recent years, you've seen the move from so essentially there's not any ability for an association entity to act as a club as well. So what is going to happen is each association, council and zone is going to be set up with a replicated representative teams entity, very much as how it operates in My Cricket Now. I do know there is a little bit of frustration around that, which I do understand. I guess on the counter and some of the feedback I've also received in a positive light around the addition of those representative teams is you might be giving access to very differently to your association and your comp management v what you would give to your representative teams entity in terms of coaches and managers and things like that. So it just keeps those tasks a little bit separated. So look, as I said, there may be a little bit of frustration. We understand that, but we're keen to work through. Obviously we've had a level of understanding from the last couple of years, but we're keen to work through with you and the community as we implement this transition. So your formats, webinars, online learning, training documents, Learn As You Go software. So there's some pretty good digital adoption software in PlayHQ that as you go to perform certain tasks, it actually shows you what you need to do next. So you get that sort of self-help navigation, which is a really good feature, and face-to-face consultation with Cricket New South Wales staff on a needs basis. And that'll be available from June. So we're only a day away from that. And as I said, there's some more information to come around how we'll link into the Australian cricket training that will be on offer and how we complement that in New South Wales for our local cricket community. So your additional models offered to anyone that's interested. So you've got MailChimp, you've got your Wix website management, And then you've got your e-scoring as well. So your e-scoring training will start to come in a little bit later. It's more a just-in-time approach. So that'll run from August through October. Obviously knowing that many competitions will probably kick off the week after the October long weekend. So we want to make sure that the training happens before that happens, but it doesn't happen too far in advance that, people forget or become unfamiliar with what was learned regarding the e-scoring. But as I said, the benefit is it very much looks and feels like the My Cricket live score app. So I'm sure as you get yourself and others more familiar with it, there will be a level of comfort to that. So how does this look like? And this is very much just an overview of how the training, it's not by no means pigeonholed into, my respective cricket entity is listed there, and that's the only time I can engage with training. We very much tried to align this to your current operations, and certainly when you are, looking at the lens, when do clubs within your local remit, so local cricket areas, start to open their registrations? So July 1, to have registrations open by July 1, obviously training is going to be happening over the next 4 weeks. Then there's going to be a focus on, so your New South Wales DCA, your SCA being your Sydney Cricket Association, they're both metro-based bodies. Then you've got your Newcastle zone, you've got Central Coast zone, you've got Illawarra, and you've got the ACT as well. As we move forward to having registrations open by August 1, we start to include Riverina Zone, North Coastal Zone, and the remainder of the Greater Illawarra Zone and ACT Southern District Zone. And then from September 1, there'll be further engagement, and there's no reason why there won't be a chances for any of these areas to engage with online content, especially earlier. But Central Northern Zone and Western Zone from September 1 on. And as we said, we want to make sure that there's plenty of time to do what you need to do, but those training and onboarding experiences match to cricket operations in your local area. And if you're not normally, sort of opening registrations to September 1, that we're not by no means trying to say you need to do it in July 1. So we just want to map out that journey, and that's based on a bit of feedback we've received, no doubt from multiple people on this call, but more broadly across both the core cricket, the 3 core community cricket bodies being the New South Wales DCA, the SCA, and obviously country cricket as well. So that's about it for tonight. Thanks for submitting those questions. As I've touched on, we'll make sure we catalogue all those questions, and we make sure we'll send out responses. There is a second webinar that will run on Thursday night, so don't fret if you don't receive communication in the next 48 hours from this session. We'll do a joint communication once both sessions have run. As I said, catalogue the questions, and the recording will also be made available. We know, people are tied up with winter sports at the moment, or just generally life is very busy. So, happy for you to share that recording with other key members of your organisation, but also obviously with your clubs as well, if you're involved in that association space. So thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it, and we look forward to being in contact with you shortly. Thank you. Bye.